Hello and welcome. We are just waiting a second until maybe a few more attendees show up. We are at 16 now. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Healthy Water, Healthy Air community update here on Zoom. I am Martin Riegels and I'm the host of this session. I'm also part of the Healthy Water, Healthy Air study team, and me and my family live here in the South Bay as well. In a moment, I'll be handing things over to our featured speaker, Dr. Granados, who is leading the study. And before that, a quick breakdown of how tonight's event will look. First, Dr. Granados will walk us through a presentation of early findings of the study. And secondly, we will open up the floor for a live Q&A session where you can ask your questions directly. But throughout this event, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A chat box at any point during the presentation. We are saving these questions and will answer as many as we can after the presentation. Just a quick housekeeping. We know how personal and sometimes also frustrating the situation with the Tijuana River can be. So we want this to be a welcoming and positive space for everyone to come together, listen, and have an impactful conversation. Whether you live near the Tijuana River, work here, or are simply invested in the health of this community, your presence matters. So a special thanks goes out to all the attendees who filled out our survey, our studies community survey in the last month and who are here tonight as well. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker to you. Dr. Paula Stiegler Granados is an associate professor at the School of Public Health and the head of the Environmental Health Division here at San Diego State University. Dr. Granados researches how the environment and pollution affect populations, and she has a particular focus on the US-Mexico border region. For the Healthy Water, Healthy Air study, her team and other colleagues have taken many samples of the Tijuana River Valley water, soil, and air and analyzed them for harmful pollutants and pathogens. Additionally, a community survey was launched to learn more about the health issues of the people in the South Bay. And after data collection is completed for this phase, she and her team analyze and publish the data. And with this, I'll leave the screen for Dr. Granados. Please go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Martin. It's really great to be here with everyone. I think we still have some people joining us. So I will definitely start with a little bit more background on what we're going to be doing and some introductions. I also wanted to acknowledge Dr. Uni is also here with us, and she has really been the true leader of this health survey component. I'm helping to support the overall program, but Dr. Uni is an environmental epidemiologist and just an amazing person doing this research with us. Dr. Jenny Quintana could not be here tonight, but I just wanted to acknowledge her leadership and guidance in this project. So with that, I believe if you're happy or if you feel compelled to also tell us who you are, you can put that in the chat and we can see everyone who's here. I also wanted to acknowledge, as I introduce our team, that I am not a medical professional. I am a researcher and a community health person, but we may have some medical questions that come up. We may also have a few medical providers that are also here with us that work closely with us. We can look to them for some possible information sharing, but just know that we're here to share the data that we've collected, try to answer as many questions as we can as it relates to what we are experts in. But we do welcome any and all questions. Just don't know that I can answer all of them, but we definitely will write them down to you and then try to respond as best we can. And I believe that the Q&A feature should be working, so you can add questions into that. And as Martin also mentioned, we should be able to respond either while we're going and there's somebody can respond, or we can read them out loud and respond at the end. So I do not do this alone. As I mentioned, I have a fabulous team of several faculty members. We also have Savannah Shiflett, who's here with us, who is helping us with data management. You met Martin. Isabel Roshi is also our community outreach specialist who's been helping us with posts on Instagram and sharing information dissemination as well. So we have also a lot of students who go out, and you can see some of them in the photos doing sampling, who are out there doing the hard work and working on helping us with the data analysis as well. So. So why are we doing this? Martin explained a little about some of the things we're doing with this presentation, but I think importantly, what we're really trying to make sure that we're doing is giving back the data and the results that we have even before it's published. But as soon as we have them and we've started the analysis, we want to listen to community concerns, share a little bit about some of the research that we've been doing with our environmental research, share the data that we're finding from the community health surveys that people have filled out, and then also just inform everyone so that we can make better public health decisions together. So it's an audience here that is people who have taken the surveys, also advocacy partners. We may have representatives from our government here as well that are listening, but we welcome all questions and thoughts on this, as we just want to make sure we're giving this data back in the clearest, best way we can. So for those of you who filled out the survey, we do have a short video. If you haven't seen it yet, I would love to share this with you. I think Martin will tell me if my volume is not working or the picture's not working, but this is a very short, like 30-second video. Hi, I'm Dr. Paula Granados from San Diego State University School of Public Health. I'm here with my team to say thank you for taking our survey and telling us how the pollution from the Tijuana River is impacting your health and the health of your community.
Your voice matters. We hear you.
Thank you. Please visit our website for more information.
Thank you.
All right, I just wanted to start um, the presentation off with that. Thank you to everyone who filled out the survey or who supported the survey development or just who supports this project in general. We're very grateful to all of you because this is your voices telling us what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and it's helping to inform future decisions about what we can do next. And so tonight we're just going to briefly talk about a little bit about hydrogen sulfide because that's been something that a lot of people have been very concerned with. The smells are pretty horrible at night in many places, and they're off and on again. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Some of the survey findings from the Healthy Air, Healthy Water survey that people took over the last year and a half. Also, a little brief touch on some of our environmental study findings, and then next steps, resources, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. And so, again, we know you have lots of questions. We'll do our best to respond. And definitely, we're leaving time at the end. This presentation should take no more than 20 minutes. So just to give a little brief overview of hydrogen sulfide, probably if you're living in South Bay right now, you know what this is. And this is just an overhead shot with our drones of Saturn Boulevard River hotspot, where we have talked a lot about seeing foam from space and what that looks like. And this was sort of a close-up of a bad day at the river and trying to understand why does it smell. And so we've been working on putting together some infographics and just trying to also understand the environmental data that we have that helps us to better quantify how much hydrogen sulfide there is, but also understand why is it being formed and why is it worse at night than in the daytime. And so what is it? It's a colorless toxic gas. It sometimes smells like rotten eggs. Some people are more sensitive to it than others. I'm unfortunately a super smeller, apparently, so I can smell it at really, really low levels. And it doesn't smell like rotten eggs to me. It smells more like burning rotten tennis shoes, if you could describe it like that. But we have lots of different ways of describing it. Whatever it is, It affects everybody a little bit differently. I think that's the most important thing to understand. Where does it come from? In this case, talking about the river, it comes from wastewater, and also from industrial pollution that also interacts with the chemicals and the breakdowns of some of the organic materials. And so, as this waste breaks down, it releases the hydrogen sulfide into the air. Definitely, the smells are worse at night for a couple of reasons. One, we tend to have higher river flows at night. Two, sunlight can break down hydrogen sulfide, so it keeps it from kind of spreading out as fast and as quickly. And three, temperature and meteorological conditions. So the weather plays a role. In San Diego, our lovely, beautiful weather also has like onshore winds and offshore winds. And sometimes we have very still nights with a low pressure, like the overhead clouds. And sometimes that can trap that hydrogen sulfide closer to the ground. And this is what also creates that worse smells at night when it can't escape. And so, whenever people and animals and others are exposed to chronic levels of hydrogen sulfide, it can cause things like respiratory issues. For example, asthma can create people to have maybe nausea, headaches, brain fog, stomach issues, anxiety, tiredness, sleep problems. A lot of this has been reported by people taking the health survey, and it's also been documented in the literature. Most of the time, when we're talking about hydrogen sulfide, you'll hear these really high levels, like that we're talking about, like what people might see at an oil and gas industry or a release of some sort. But that's oftentimes not what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with is lower levels, even below the standard of what the California state says is 30 parts per billion. We see often exceedances of that over 30, but even under 30, people can still have respiratory issues and nausea and headaches. And so it just depends on the person, depends on where you're located when you're breathing it, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to also acknowledge that everybody has their own personal experience when dealing with their exposures to hydrogen sulfide. And in this situation with the Tijuana River, I also want to just say that I know we're talking about H2S or hydrogen sulfide. There are other chemicals and gases in the air that we are concerned about. Hydrogen sulfide just happens to be one that's easier to monitor and we can smell it. And so just acknowledging that it's not the only gas that's out there, but it is one of the many that we're keeping an eye on. Just like when we measure water quality at the beach, we look at indicator bacteria. You could think of hydrogen sulfide as an indicator gas as well. So how do we monitor it? Lots of different ways. The San Diego County Air Pollution Control District has 3 air monitors in the community. They have one at Nestor Elementary, close to Saturn Boulevard. They also have one in San Isidro at the fire station, and they have one in Imperial Beach. I believe it's on the city building, the main city building there. And we have live monitoring that's happening hour by hour, and you can log onto their website. I believe that Savannah's going to put in the chat a link to where you can access the monitoring data. We also know that UCSD's Airborne Institute is also measuring data. They have something that they call preliminary data, and they're measuring this is like a 1 minute average versus an hour average. So you'll see different data sources are out there. I encourage you to look at all of them and ask questions about how to interpret the data. If you do have questions, you can contact Air Pollution Control District directly. You can also contact Dr. Kim Prather's lab at the Airborne Institute as well to speak with them about the data or try to help if you can contact us and we can also try to put you in contact with people to help understand the data a little bit better. So I'm going to transition over to the community health survey and what did you all tell us? And so we launched a community health survey that several people here I would like to acknowledge helped to develop this survey. I didn't do it alone. We did it all together as a team involving community members who got together and we talked about what questions and topics were important. And we put this health survey together. It is very similar to the ones that the county also did through something called a Casper survey and through an ACEs survey. The difference with our survey is it's been going on much longer. And so we have more consistent results over time to show us trends as opposed to just like over 1 month or 1 week. We have over a year and a half that people have been responding. And so these are some of the things I'm going to present tonight. It's only a little snippet of the major things that we do have. And I think that it's important to note that there'll be more results coming, and when they do, we'll have another session and be happy to share that with you. So far, this is a map where you can see where we had more responses. And this, again, is uh, part of a series of surveys that we have out there. There's one where there was a group of several hundred people that have taken it consistently every month. And then there's this other set where people take it once and they take it the very first time before they maybe take it multiple times. And we're talking about the people who have taken it once, and this is over a long period of time. Um, I guess it's a little more complicated. This is where Dr. Nee could probably clarify in the chat or the Q&A a little bit more at the end how this works. That's what she does. But basically, what we have here is a map showing where the majority of people who took the survey were from, and you can see Imperial Beach and San Diego and San Isidro had the most responses compared to some of the other places. This is a really busy slide, but I think that I hope I can simplify it a little bit. The red line that you can see at the top is um, hydrogen sulfide gas. And this is something that I'm really grateful to Dr. Nee and her PhD student Lizzie for putting together. This is from the data from the San Diego Air Pollution Control District. The blue represents flow in the river. And the purple represents reports of when people call in smelling odors into the complaint line for San Diego Air Pollution Control District. And so I think that you can see here, you've got some things happening seasonally where you have more reports of odors here and here in September of 2024, which is when we had pretty terrible heat episode that created a lot of hydrogen sulfide being trapped. And so we had sort of this is when I began to really get involved with the program. And then you have other peaks here. You can see we have a lot more peaks in the spring seasons, and you'll start to see that's also when we have more flow and we have more hydrogen sulfide as well. And a lot of that, like I said, has to do with flow and the meteorology. Okay, so I'm going to break down this graph a little bit because I think it's important to understand what we were seeing is the red bars represent how frequently people reported reducing the time they spent outdoors. And as you know, we live in the most beautiful place potentially on Earth. It's amazing here, but it's also a reason why we live here so we can spend a lot of time outdoors. And whenever the environment is so poor, or we perceive it's really poor, people reduce their time outdoors, especially some of our kids and elderly populations. And so the red graphs show in in the last 2 weeks, have you reduced your time spent outdoors as a result of these environmental problems? And you can see that in the winter of 2025, almost 80% said they did. The purple line is how many people reported odors that they could smell, like hydrogen sulfide, more than 3 times a week. And the blue line represents people's response to whether they thought they perceived the air quality to be poor. And so you can see that this trends along the same lines as reduced time outdoors corresponds with people smelling frequent odors and also with perceiving the air quality to be poor. And so this directly, again, relates to how much time people want to spend outdoors, which can impact public health. We obviously want our kids and families to be outdoors, getting exercise, etc. This slide is about respiratory health. And so I'm going to break this down a little bit. The reason why the blue line is so tall is because that's any upper respiratory symptoms that were reported. And upper respiratory symptoms are like cold, like your head and your chest, or your head mostly feels like you have a cold. The purple line is lower respiratory symptoms. That's generally tends to be more serious, things like pneumonia. The pinkish colored bar is anyone getting a new asthma diagnosis in the last few weeks. And then the reddish colored bar is if people who already currently maybe have asthma or use an inhaler have reported more intense treatment for wheezing or asthma. And so, upper respiratory symptoms too, going back to that, can also be like sinus problems and things like that. And so that was the majority of what we heard from people. And you can also see this line is I asked Dr. Nee and her team if they could continue to put this line on top that is people reporting smelling odors more than 3 times a week. And it sort of trends with more odors, more symptoms. So, also seasonality has a lot to do with this. And so we've broken this down into seasons. So you can see going all the way from fall of 2024 until recently, summer of 2026. Headache, sleep, and focus issues. So, headaches were probably the number one thing that were reported, especially after evenings where the hydrogen sulfide odors were reported stronger. And that was followed by trouble sleeping because oftentimes it would wake people up. Difficulty concentrating, that would be throughout the day. And then also people reporting brain fog. That's the reddish colored bars. And so headaches again being number one, trouble sleeping being kind of there with difficulty concentrating in purple and pink, and the brain fog being in the reddish colored lines. And so there's a little bit of a pattern here. We're still trying to better understand how this it relates with people having frequent odors, but we do think that especially the trouble sleeping and the headaches correspond with a lot of the issues that people report with also smelling the hydrogen sulfide, and that tracks. Okay, so I kind of went through those a little bit quickly, but like I said, we can go back and we'll do a Q&A and we'll talk a little bit more about those after I present a little bit more about the environmental study findings. And I wanted to thank my colleagues, Dr. Ho and her research assistants and our students for putting this data together. This is, again, very preliminary data. I have presented some of this in the past, but we're still working on and analyzing this because we have a lot of data. So I'm going to kind of go through this kind of quickly. I want you just to kind of come away with an overall understanding of what we've been working on. But this is just a sampling, the map of some of the samples, places where we are taking samples. My team has mostly focused closer to the river mouth, and then also up here at Scripps Pier is in La Jolla is sort of our control site, if you want to call it that, where we, don't think it's as contaminated as down here at the river mouth. And so the things that our team has been looking at SDSU in the School of Public Health as chemical data by doing something what we call a non-targeted chemical analysis, where Dr. Ho's team basically goes out, takes samples of water, air, and soil, and analyze them for every chemical that you might possibly find. And then we try to see if we see patterns at different sites. And so the water samples are obviously just the water. And then air samples are interesting because we use silicone wristbands as low-cost air monitors. So basically, kind of like those wristbands that people wear after a race or an event. Those absorb a lot of the chemicals that are in the air. And we don't have people wear these. We hang them up around the environment, and then we take them back and analyze them to see what chemicals they've absorbed. And we particularly hang them at places near the river, and then also places like Scripps Pier and other places. And then we take soil samples as well. The other thing that we do is something called metagenomic sequencing. Basically, we're looking for pathogens in the air, and it's the particles that are left behind by these. And we're doing that with the water and the air and the soil as well. We're going to share these slides afterwards, so if you don't catch it now, you can take a look at this later, but we definitely found a diverse chemical mix of contaminants in the river. And a reminder, we don't have the amounts, but we do have what we call abundance. So we can look at the chemical and see, do we see a lot of this fingerprint of this chemical, or do we see it just occasionally? And you could think of all of these chemicals as having a fingerprint. And we've listed out a few of the compounds that we found just to give you an idea. And they are right in line with what we might see with untreated sewage, with industrial waste, and with agricultural runoff and urban runoff as well. And so, like things like caffeine or a cannabis, those are things that you would expect to find in sewage. And so that kind of tells us there's definitely sewage in the water. We are seeing things like pesticides and personal care products, and a lot of that either has to do with sewage or industrial waste that's making its way into the river as well. Something of interest is that this Saturn hotspot that we've been talking about, we found unique chemical compounds there that we haven't found in other places. And so that's something of interest to us to explore further to understand how much of those chemicals are there. And several of our community partners, like Coast Keeper, and others, are working on doing some analysis around this as well. We found about 350 tentative compounds, and of those, several of them are quite toxic and they're on a toxic list of chemicals. So we really want to understand those a little bit better, but this is our first grasp at what we're looking at. I wanted to mention too that related to the smells that we smell, we are picking up a lot of volatile, what we call organosulfur compounds, and we're detecting those mostly at that Saturn hotspot. And we think that that could be some of the places where we're understanding a little bit more about what's chemically reacting and going on organically there in that spot in particular, with the waterfall effect that happens at that particular spot in the river, and how that might be driving some of those odor reports. And so we're still investigating it, but we're getting a little bit closer. I wanted to break down just a little bit, and I'll go through these really quickly. The water quality findings from the chemical analysis is what I mentioned before, is we are finding sort of distinct chemical features and signatures. I know I said the 380 some odd in the previous one, but that's just what we're boiling it down to, what we're positive of, but we're finding other chemical fingerprints in the water that we're still going through. And of these, those 380 or so are ones that we found only in the river, Tijuana River, and not at Scripps Pier. And so, again, like I said, kind of matters whether you have rain event or no rain event, if the water's flowing quickly, like there's a big release of wastewater, or if it's just trickling out slowly and moving slowly. It really makes a difference in how we look at the chemicals in the water. And then at the river mouth, and at a couple of private wells, they did show the lowest amount of chemical contamination. A lot of that has to do with dilution from the groundwater and from the ocean coming in as well. So a lot of times we don't pick up all the chemicals. Things also get picked up in the estuary as well, and naturally filtered out. In the air quality findings, this again was the wristbands. Our student Ryan Duffy has been working really hard on analyzing these. We're definitely finding the highest airborne contamination signature at the Saturn Boulevard hotspot, where it's becoming aerosolized, and clusters right around that of where we're finding the highest amount of chemicals. And then also the river turbulence has a lot to do with that. We are seeing a few of those same chemicals, though, at the coastline, at the river mouth. So we do know that the river influences the air quality throughout the whole region. So we're still working on getting more samples. We've only taken a few so far, so I can't speak to the entire river valley, but from where we have taken, this is what we know. And then sediment findings, we are seeing what we are looking at with the few samples that we have is we are seeing widespread contamination in terms of chemicals that we're finding inland as well as close to the coast. We are finding it's lowest at the river mouth. Again, sediment doesn't always make it down to the ocean. The estuary picks up a lot of that as well. So we still have a lot more to learn on this. And then I don't want to like nerd out too much on the metagenomic piece, but it was really interesting that we decided to take drone samples when we were there in September of 2024 when there was a really large amount of hydrogen sulfide in the air at the time. We didn't fully understand what was going on. And so we sent out some drones. We were there, but the drones would hover over the water like at the river mouth or Saturn and pull the water out. We also hung these air samplers that could test the air as well. And we did this for chemicals and we did this for pathogens. And so I just wanted to be clear, though, that some of the findings that we found of the pathogens, bacteria, and stuff that we found in the air, it doesn't show whether it's alive or, and it can cause illness. It just shows that those particles are there, the DNA that it leaves behind. So just to be very clear about what we are finding, it's just kind of showing us what's there, but we can't tell you that like it's active norovirus, for example, at the time. And so some of the water samples that we found, the key findings that we found, a lot of Pseudomonas in the water, and this isn't necessarily uncommon, but it's more common in water that's been polluted with sewage, for example. Aromonas is also something that can be found in sewage, and we also found it in the water, and a few other things that we're kind of concerned about because some of these, like this last one here, the last few here, can also be associated with antibiotic resistance, and so we need to explore these a little bit more. But each location that we sampled at had its own unique fingerprint of pathogens as well. And so we're trying to figure out what that looks like. In terms of, and that was for the water. In terms of the air for the pathogens, we did find that there was more variety of bacteria and other microbes in our air samples. A lot more of other types. Again, the water was mostly dominated by that Pseudomonas, while the other bacteria and microbes that we found near the in the air were quite different. And so we found quite a few things that we're looking into to try to understand how much of those did we find. And I hope that we'll have some more information about this in the very near future as we're trying to get this published as fast as we can. So that was all of the sciencey pieces of this, and I wanted just to briefly state like what's next. We really want to turn this research into action, and so been working with several of our community partners, colleagues, and friends to put together some healthcare provider sessions that we were just given the green light to start with. We are recruiting actively medical providers, doctors, nurses, physicians assistants, community health workers, and others to participate in what will be a monthly online session to talk about environmental pollution and how locally it's impacting our communities and present cases and try to help people to think through the challenges of tracking and documenting these illnesses. And hopefully that will be getting started in August with the help from, like I said, from several people here. Ongoing research, Dr. Quintana has a health link study that's looking at household dust that might be related to the chemical compositions of things that we're finding in people's houses. Other environmental health studies going on at SDSU. Dr. Nee is working on a couple of research studies she's putting together, hopefully looking at Medi-Cal data potentially and understanding if people are getting sicker in our South Bay communities than in other places. Also, just sharing more of this through publications and community engagement. We always want to provide summaries of our data to our policymakers to help them make better decisions. And definitely, I know we have several of our community partners here with us as well. Shout out to our Tijuana River Coalition partners, all of you that help support all of this work. We couldn't do it without you. So this is a few resources. Again, I do believe that Savannah may have been putting these into the chat. And thank you. And I think from here, we're going to start with a Q&A. And I'm going to do my best. And also, I think we have other partners here and community members that we work with. So I believe hopefully we've promoted them to be a panelist so they can also help support answering some of these questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And that was a lot. It went a little bit longer than I wanted to. Apologize for that. But maybe we can start with the Q&A. Okay, I'm going to just start with the one I can see right now, about what is the significance of detection of more types of microbes in the air samples versus the water samples. And um, I wish we had Dr. Lara Jacobo with us, who worked on this study with us. But basically, I think that we're trying to figure out why, right now, why we found more variety of these pathogens in the air versus the water. My suspicion, and this is a suspicion, is that with the water samples, they probably tend to be dominated by very specific types because of the way that water is, combines and binds things together, while the air allows things to aerosolize a little bit more. So that might have been a really bad um, response, but that's going to be my educated guess. I think we're still trying to figure that out. Okay.
Thank you very much. And we see some questions pouring in. Um, Maybe I can read out one participant. He commented, um, the air quality email alerts are great. I think this is referring to the air quality notifications from the San Diego Air Pollution Control District. Maybe Dr. Granados, for people who don't know about this, could you tell us about these alerts? What are they for?
Yeah, so these alerts are put out by the Air Pollution Control District anytime there is an exceedance above 30 parts per billion, which is what the California standard has been set at in terms of a nuisance. And I'm using air quotes here because a lot of us believe that this standard is a little bit out of date and should be lower. But for now, the Air Pollution Control District, at its three monitors that it does have, anytime any one of those exceeds that 30 parts per billion, they are sending out a message. And we do have to have people sign up to receive those alerts. I think hopefully Savannah put the chat how you can do that. I get them on my phone and in an email. There's a actual person that basically comes in at 5 in the morning to look at the data from the night before, validate it, send out those messages, and then they're doing it up until about 10 o'clock at night. We were having some issues a while back about them only coming out once a day and not as regularly as we would like. And we appreciate the fact that they're coming out more frequently now um, to help notify people how they can make decisions about their day based off of what they're seeing.
Thank you. So these alerts can be received via phone or via email,
Mhm.
and people can sign up. We have shared that resource in the webinar chat on the site. Maybe I want to read out another question. Um, a participant wrote, "What do you think is the source of some of the industrial chemicals you found traces of? Where are those pesticides coming from? Are they coming from farms on the US side, from homes? Is that clear?"
Um, right now, what we do know is that we are definitely seeing agricultural pesticide chemicals, some of them that have been banned in the US. And so we could, because this watershed crosses both the US and Mexico multiple times, it starts in the US, moves to Mexico, comes back into the US closer to the beach. We do know that anything that gets into the watershed at any of those places can potentially end up in the river. And so that also includes if there's any industrial manufacturing happening along the river, on the US side or in Mexico that is not discarding of their wastewater and waste chemicals properly, it could end up in the river as well. And so what you just see in normal urban runoff can end up there as well. So with the types of chemicals, as I showed you already on one of the slide of just a preliminary short set of the chemicals we're finding, definitely stuff is coming from industrial waste. And again, that can be coming from the industry on the Mexico side and or the US side as well, that could be polluting the river.
So at this point, very hard to pinpoint it yet.
It's hard to pinpoint exactly
Hmm.
who and what, but we
Yeah.
do know it's happening. There's no doubt that there's dumping that is occurring in the river. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing things that we wouldn't normally find in average human generated sewage slash wastewater. We're seeing industrial waste, which we shouldn't find in sewage alone. So, yeah.
Another participant commented, when is the pollution worse? At day or at night? In summer or in winter? Can you say something about that?
So far, what we're seeing is that the hydrogen sulfide or and other chemicals that might be present in that gas mixture are happening worse at night. Like I said, meteorologically, that inversion layer, I'm not the expert on this, but from what I know, is trapping a lot of those gases closer to the ground. And so we do see that people tend to feel worse at night from this. I do know, like I said, we have other experts who do the atmospheric chemistry, like Dr. Prather and her team, who could probably answer that question better. But I do think that we are seeing trends in what we're looking at in terms of the complaints or the odor reports are happening more in the spring and fall. And so I think again it has a lot to do with the weather and how things interact with it. But it also depends on the flow. If there is a large amount of flow in the river of wastewater, untreated and flowing, which seems to happen mostly in the evening hours, again, that's also corresponding to those peaks in people reporting odors and smells. In terms of pollution level, I think we um, are looking at, the differences between dry season and wet season, because that's kind of what we have here in San Diego. And definitely during the wet season, you have these rain events that push all that runoff into the water and flush it out into the system pretty quickly. And during the dry season, the river shouldn't technically really have very much water in it. It's a seasonal river. And so anytime we see flows of water in the river during a non-rain event or post-rain event, then more than likely it's consistently more than 90% made up of raw wastewater, including industrial waste and sewage. And so I don't know if that answered the question, but basically that's what we're seeing is dry weather, really concentrated pollution. Wet weather, it's a lot of water, a lot of flow pushing it out quickly. And so that's kind of how we see the differences here.
Another attendee commented, how many communities or what communities does the Tijuana River impact in terms of health?
Good question. We definitely see it impacting the communities who have responded to our health survey for sure. So Imperial Beach, San Isidro, Nestor, South San Diego, which is where Nestor is, along the river valley, Playas de Tijuana, also other communities like Comunidad Chilpancingo, that's closer to the front of the Rio de la Mar. So it's tributaries where we think that there's other, wastewater getting into those areas. So pretty much all along the border from eastern side of San Diego County and Tijuana to the river mouth and the beaches, as well as south, because we also well, this is apart from the river, but we do know that some of the untreated waste ends up also going down to about 10 kilometers south of the border, close to Punta Bandera, where it flows into the ocean, and our lovely southern swells that give us great surfing in San Diego bring that water north. And so our Imperial Beach communities are kind of in a special place where they have the river mouth that's putting out a lot of the pollution coming from the river. And then they also have these south swells that might be bringing up the same types of pollution from the southern part of south of the border. And so that too kind of moves all the way up into those communities. Coronado is being impacted with their beaches. We do believe some of the research coming out of Dr. Prather and others is showing that this pollution travels even further. And so I think we should be staying tuned to understanding that flow and how other communities, not just here locally, hyper locally are being impacted because if it's becoming aerosolized, it could be impacting further inland as well.
And I see another participant asking a question that goes in this direction, asking, are Coronado residents and visitors reporting the same health symptoms?
Coronado, a little bit. I wish they would be a little more active sometimes, in reporting. We did have a hard time getting people to fill out the survey, but that could just be maybe the marketing and outreach, wasn't as effective there. But definitely people are reporting illnesses after coming into contact with Coronado water. We've heard a few cases of that. Our military personnel, like our SEALs, Navy SEALs that are training right off the Silver Strand, have reported illnesses. People have sometimes complained about or had reported odors in Coronado, but I do feel like it's more isolated. It's not isolated, but it tends to gravitate more towards the river area where the odors are. But definitely the pollution is in the water at Coronado Beach, and it's been closed multiple times in the last several years. I think it was closed again recently, so for sure.
Thank you. Interesting. Um, some people were asking about sharing the findings. At this point, the some data is still collected, some data and some samples was already collected, is in the process of analyzing. People are asking if this data will also be shared in some form with public institutions. People are mentioning the CDC, the City Council of Imperial Beach, similar places, the International Boundary and Water Commission. What can you tell us about the this piece of data sharing?
Yeah, I think with the health survey data, Dr. Uni led the efforts for getting that published. We have our first paper coming out to show some of this health survey self-reported illness and perception data that has been accepted for publication. Um, and I think that that's hopefully coming out in the next few weeks. For us as academics, generally, when we go through the peer review process, that's the best time for us to share because it's been vetted by others. We know that it's safe to share. This, like what we're doing here, is an informal preliminary data sharing. So we can say, it hasn't been formalized, it hasn't been peer reviewed. It is just what we're finding initially that we don't want to sit on. We want people to understand and see it right away. So I think that as soon as we do get these things published, though, that's when we can go to the policymakers and others. Meanwhile, we are also happy to present like what we just did here and now at other community meetings if necessary, or one-on-one with our politicians and decision makers. We can absolutely do that. But with that caveat of knowing if it's not peer reviewed and published by an academic, that's for us the golden seal of approval that says you're able to share this widely and freely, and with confidence of knowing that it has been vetted and it's good to go. So I just wanted to make sure that people are aware of that. But happy
So
to
we are
share this with others.
so we are still at an early stage of those findings, and the analysis is still in progress before it can be shared further.
Some of them, yeah. We have a couple of these
Understood.
things that are in the publication pipeline right now as we speak. But
Mhm.
it takes a little bit of time, unfortunately.
An attendee also mentioned the question, is there similar research being done south of the border?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that, but I do know that there's a partnership that has been put together with several people like Four Walls International, Coastkeeper, and others that are working with a couple of the organizations in Mexico, like Profepa and others, to pool a data dashboard together that shares environmental quality data and health data as much as we can across both sides of the border. And so we do have partners working in Mexico on this issue. They don't have as many resources. It's a little bit different types of research happening there, but there are efforts to bring this together. Maybe Savannah, if you can find the one community website through Coastkeeper and share that link. I forgot exactly what it's called, but I think it's called One Coastal Community or One Coast. And we can share that link with you, or you can get more information about what's being done in Mexico as well.
Thank you. Um, Another attendee is asking, we heard a lot lately about sewage and chemicals found in the air, but not so much about bacteria and fungi. Um, it's common to find bacteria and fungi in the air, if I'm correct? Are there direct ties to the sewage pollution?
Yes, and the answer is yes. Anytime you have wastewater that has human waste and pathogens and bacteria and things in it, just like at a septic pond or a septic lagoon or a wastewater treatment plant, you will have aerosolized pathogens. That's just how it works. If they hit a waterfall or a wave, they become aerosolized, and so there is the potential for people to be exposed to that. There's lots of research out there on wastewater treatment plant workers, for example, who fall ill to certain illnesses. The difference is that at a wastewater treatment plant, they'll often be wearing personal protective equipment, and that protects them. And also, there's a lot of effort at wastewater treatment facilities to tamp down the aerosolization so that don't people don't get exposed. In this situation where you have raw, unvetted, unfiltered, untreated sewage running through the middle of a community and the environment, it's really hard to figure out what becomes aerosolized and what doesn't. But we do know that anytime you get near to a source of sewage that's being aerosolized, and whatever kind of sewage it is, there's the potential to breathe it in. And this is not new research that's been done, like I said, for decades at wastewater treatment plants, but it doesn't happen that often in this amount for this long of a period of time in a community. And that's what makes this truly a crisis in public health, is that this has been going on in such a large quantity and for such a long period of time. Makes it really critical for us to understand those health impacts on people that are breathing this. It used to be that we thought it don't get in the water. And now we understand that the water picks up this, puts it into the air, and we breathe it. And that's really important to understand. How do we reduce those impacts? And how do we stop it from happening? Hopefully this is helpful.
Thank you. Another commenter, another attendee had another question. I appreciate the information. Our kids play baseball and soccer at the Tijuana River Valley Park. Sometimes in the evenings, the smell is really strong. Are there practical steps that we as parents and residents can take to advocate for our community's health at a local, state, or federal level? I know it's going to take funding and a lot of community involvement.
Well, you're here. That's first step. And I'm sure you've probably been at other places asking questions, and many of you are actively involved in advocating. There's quite a few efforts going on. I'm going to go back to the kids outside playing. If the odors are strong and kids are susceptible, they're closer to the ground, they breathe faster. Dr. Uni is nodding. She knows a lot more about this than I do, but kids, and maybe actually, Dr. Uni, if you want to come off mute and just talk a little bit more about kids' exposure to some of these things.
Yeah, so as researchers, we always consider children are the most vulnerable population for acute pollution, no matter from river, from air, from other sources, mostly because they're little, they're developing, their lung are developing, brain are developing, and then they're close to the ground, and then they also have those hand-to-mouth behavior. Uh, so I would say that if the odor is very strong, probably reduce the outdoor time be a good option. And then I would say sign up for, our odor report or the H2S alert or even the EPA air quality index. But those kind of thing could guide, your outdoor time. And then sometimes people also suggest like wearing a mask if you feel comfortable about that, right? And install air filter at home. So those are the things that we can do as residents there. Uh, but I also understand that all these options probably has pros and cons, right? But probably wearing a mask is not very comfortable, and then air filter, you need to turn it on, and then you probably have other concerns as well. But those are the major strategies that as parents, as residents, we can use. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Yeah, and I think reporting the odors to the odor report line. And as researchers, we actually have access to that data. I just learned recently that the Air Pollution Control District has on their website the pollution report the data. When people report that, it becomes a part of the record, and you can access that. And we do, and we're looking at it. And I think it's important that people report that. And what that lends to is your voice, allowing us to look at how often is that happening, where is it happening, and advocating to the local, state, and federal governments about, again, that this isn't just a water problem, this is also an air problem. And I'm sorry that your family has to go through that with trying to enjoy sports with your kids. That's such a once in a lifetime experience we get to have with our children. Hopefully changing the times when you do it, if you can do it a little earlier. Spring baseball season, though, that seems to be whenever the smells happen to start a little earlier and be more intense. So having air purifiers at home, I would say though, and I'm again not a medical provider, but if your kids are experiencing any symptoms, visit your doctor, like if they're having any wheezing or asthma or increased problems. And then also, limiting, especially time outdoors if they have any underlying health conditions. Absolutely, but speak with your doctor about that as well. And hopefully your doctor will be joining in on some of these educational sessions that we have to help them better understand how can they treat their patients that are suffering from some of this environmental pollution.
And as you're mentioning the odor reporting, we had a comment also saying, I stopped reporting odors when the sensors were installed. Maybe you can tell the attendees about reporting orders. How does that work? What are those reports for? How do people make a report?
The odor reports are done right now through the San Diego Air Pollution Control District. That's the one I know of. There may be a few others, but that's the one I know about the
Mhm.
most. You report that you're smelling it. It records the day and time and what community you're reporting from. And that gets transmitted to the air district. They can track that. What notified them really of a serious issue back in September of 2024 was that they received thousands of odor complaints at once, as opposed to a trickling in. So the more you complain, or the more you, I won't say complain, but the more you report the odors, the more times that you do that and that you encourage your family and friends and neighbors to do that, the more often it gets tracked. And with that, what the government decides to do with that data is really up to the people in charge of deciding how to advocate for that. But I can tell you from a personal experience, working with the Air Pollution Control District, is trying to take that data and aggregate that to put it up at the state level so that the state also understands the gravity of the situation here in our communities. Because oftentimes, I'm going to be very honest, Sacramento and DC aren't living here in our region and they don't experience what we're experiencing. And so it's really critical that we have this data to give to them so that we can help to advocate for solutions, because unfortunately, this issue isn't just a singular issue that we can deal with right here locally. This is an international issue that requires international interventions that are outside of and when I say our, I mean as a community, as a local community ability to control. So.
Yeah. We had a commenter who asked, I live in Imperial Beach. How can I improve the air in my house? Should I have the windows open or the windows closed? What should I look out for?
I'm I'm gonna say this with a little caveat that I'm not 100% sure, because again, we do know that the pollution is airborne, and we do have air purifiers that you can access. They need to be special air purifiers, and you may have heard about this, but I know that the San Diego Pollution Air Control District was giving out air purifiers that have potassium permanganate in them, that help to filter out some of the toxic gases. If you can have access to one of those, that would be great. One in your bedrooms would be great. Whether you want to keep your windows open or closed, if you smell an odor such as like hydrogen sulfide gas, I highly recommend that you close your windows and turn on the air filters to try to clear out those gases as fast as you can. That's the best recommendation we have right now.
You.
These are great questions, and I know we're almost at time. Um, I know we're also tracking questions so we can try to like
Mm.
respond. Um, I guess.
Yes, we have to be mindful of all of our community members' time. So we reached a point. Do you want to answer one last question, Dr.
Sure.
Granados? Mm-hmm. Uh, we had a question saying, will this ever be resolved? I personally have asked my primary care provider as well as my child's provider to keep notes and how the situation has worsened. Uh, any words on where things are on a state or federal level solving the crisis?
Um, well, first of all, I just wanted to say shout out to the person that's informing their doctors and their pediatricians because that's the best thing that we can do is, just to make sure you tell them that you believe that this is caused by the pollution and document that and encourage them to document that because there's not a good way of doing that right now. I know we work a lot with Matt and Kimberly Dixon at the South Bay Urgent Care who've been really great advocates for getting physicians to start to figure out how do we document this and what to do about it. So I think that it's critical that you communicate with your providers, and if they are in disbelief of that, there's tons of information out there now that could guide them towards the concept of this being a pollution-related exposure. But definitely speak with your doctors. In terms of how close are we to a solution, I think we're closer than we have been in the past. I've personally been looking at this issue for more than 20 years, and it has gotten worse. But I also think that it got so bad that it became something that couldn't be ignored. And I personally have not seen this much national and state and local attention to this issue since I've started dealing with it 20 years ago. And so are we closer? I think we're moving that direction. I've been watching also improvement talks about improving infrastructure in Mexico, dealing with it here on our side of the border as well, and how do we work together on this? And I'm hopeful. So maybe I can end on a hopeful note of saying that this needle has been moved a lot further than it has been in the past. And thanks to all of the collective voices here, of your voices, the researchers' voices, the advocacy voices, everybody's definitely coming together to elevate this topic, and it hasn't been easy to do. But I think that the more we shout, the more people have to listen, I hope. So keep shouting, keep talking with the researchers, keep talking with your local advocacy groups and community politicians. Ask them to do something. It's the best we can do right now.
Yes, thank you very much. And we try to share as many resources, helpful resources for the attendees in the chat. So everyone feel free to click on those links, bookmark some links, and hopefully there are some helpful resources. We tried to answer as many questions as possible today. Um, if you have further questions, please reach us through our website. Our website is tjriver.sdsu.edu. And before we log off tonight, I want to say a giant thank you to everyone attending, and of course to Dr. Granados and her study team. Feel free to bookmark our website for any project updates and more findings that we will continuously publish on the website. Uh, as I said, the link is also posted in the chat. And thank you in the name of the whole research team for attending today. Your input is very valuable. Have a good night, everyone.
Before we sign off, I just want to say I didn't get to shout out to everybody. I see a few people in the chat, like also Dr. V. Wen, also our colleagues at UCSD doing some awesome research. All of the physicians and community members that we've met along the way. I just wanted to say I'm grateful for your support and thank you for doing what you do. And again, I didn't have time to mention everybody, but you're in our hearts and thoughts as we're moving through this process. So thank you all for attending. Um, Reach out if you have questions. And thanks to our team. Again, big shout out to my team. I couldn't do it without them. So I'm grateful.
So thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and we all look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.